Hi, imagine it's the 1980s and you wanted to take an electronic photograph. No, not a digital photo, but an electronic photo, i.e. not film. You wanted it to be able to display on either a computer or a monitor, a TV or whatever. You had to get one of these things. This is the Canon Ion still video camera. This predates digital cameras. Now, before digital cameras came along, you had these what's called still video cameras. And yes, PAL is the PAL video format that you're familiar with, because these things were not digital cameras. They actually took photos and stored them on, in this particular case, check it out, ta-da, a 2-inch what's called a video floppy. Now, these were actually invented by Sony in 1981. They actually came out with the first Mavica camera, not to be confused with the Mavica name you're familiar with. It does go in there somehow. The Mavica name you're familiar with these days with the digital Mavica cameras, that started out as a still video camera. But they weren't really, it really wasn't a commercial success. Now, Canon came out with the first commercially successful, really, still video camera, the RC250. The model we're going to tear down today is the RC260, which this one came out in 1991 and is still basically an analog camera. It stores still frames from a PAL video. So we've basically got a PAL video sensor like was used in camcorders back in the day in here, but instead of storing it to a digital file format like JPEG or bitmap or something else, it stored it as a frame from a PAL video, and hence that's why this thing has video out, and it just stored them and replayed them from these video floppy disks. This one, called the VF50, presumably because you could store 50 still images on here. And you've got to remember, this is not a digital format floppy disk. So you can't ask the question, oh, how much storage has it got? It doesn't, like in bytes, it doesn't work like that. It stores analog PAL format video. So this particular one stored 50 photos of not the full PAL video standard. It was about 300 lines, 320 lines resolution. So basically 300 odd pixels vertically. That's basically all you got. And you've got to remember, the JPEG image format, it wasn't invented in 1991. It didn't come out until, or well, wasn't ratified. The standard wasn't ratified until the mid-90s. So these analog still video cameras were basically the dark scats. They were all you could pretty much do back in the late 80s, early 90s. Digital cameras as we know them today, storing to JPEG format or whatever format, didn't come around until the mid-90s, and then really didn't take off until towards more the end of the 90s. So yeah, this was it back then, and the image quality is horrible. This particular one was sent in by Dave Gonner, so thank you very much, Dave. He's from the Netherlands, and this one still works. So before we tear it down, let's power it up and see if we can get a selfie on this thing from a 1991 camera. Oh, get ready for the super quality. Check it out. If I put it into playback mode and I plug the composite video output into my capture device, look, I'm able to scroll through the different stored images. There it is. Look at that. The world's oldest selfie. Is it? No, that belongs to Buzz Aldrin, I believe. So there you go. It works a treat. I mean, you know, there's some video capture issues in here and, you know, stuff like that. But, gee, anyway, it's pretty crusty. It is PAL image quality, exactly like you'd expect. But, oh, it's pretty horrendous. Even compared to, like, the first digital still cameras. And the big difference over the original 520 models, this one had the high VF format, so it actually had extra resolution on the thing compared to the original model. Now, while it saved them to these floppy disks, you really could not put these in anything else. It's not like you had a 2-inch floppy disk reader in your computer and you could just shove it in and get the image from that. It just, like, as far as I'm aware, you could not plug these things into anything. Maybe there was some commercial reader out there or something like that, but you basically had to put it back in here and then get the video out and connect that up to your TV. And if you were advanced back in 1991, you might have some way to actually capture the PAL, the actual PAL video, and then upload that to your computer. If you're, I don't know, did anyone actually do that? But the ironic thing is, when you play back the image from this, it's actually putting it back into the PAL video format. So it's actually outputting video. It's outputting the still image, but as a continuous video image. So you've got to actually capture video. You can't actually extract the data directly from this and feed it into a computer. It doesn't work like that. And this one had a stunning 51mm equivalent f2.4 lens. There we go. And it had a macro function as well. Had a viewfinder. It's an analog viewfinder here. A little red tab pops up in there when you've got the macro mode on. It's kind of cute. And there's the button to take your image, and basically it had L means lock or off, which is strange, play and erase, so that's the playback mode, and then you got the record mode where you press the button and it records it, automatically advances to the next image. This basically just displays the image number, and you can erase them and date, but you can't do much else. It had a flash, yeah, but it's pretty crusty as a camera, let alone the recording format. And I don't think this thing came with it, but it was optional. It was the battery charger, because this thing, I don't know how long the battery lasted in here, but you could take out the battery and then you could shove it in there and charge it. Or, fantastically, look, it came with this probe. Shove it up the clacker there, and you can actually get video out, and this is what I used to get the video back out of this thing. It's got S-video, but yeah, you know, anyway, for film adapter, I'm not sure what's going on there, and for an RF unit for those people still with RF modulated TVs. And hopefully you can see the serial number there for those playing along at home. 5080, yeah, it's got a 1 at the front, but like, yeah, I think this was like the 5,000th one produced. So maybe, I don't know how they did their serial numbers, but anyway, I think it's pretty early. But yeah, I don't think they sold a huge amount of these things. So looks like we've got a backup battery in there, and it's about all she wrote. Anyway, let's crack it open. Yep, there's our coin cell battery, and it had a tripod mount as well. Fantastic, someone was thinking. And let's take the front off. I've taken out a few screws. I think she's going to come out. Ta-da! We're in like Flynn. Be careful of the photo flash capacitor in there. Probably don't want to touch that. Got to make sure that's discharged. But yeah, they've got a separate board in there for that. That's our main video sensor, of course, and that must be some sort of focus sensor in there. So we'll just whack our meter on low Z mode there, and there we go. It's only 8 volts. She'll be right. Check it out. We take off this side panel here, and we've got a 4-pin test port there or something. Test, yeah, probably production test alignment port, maybe? I don't know. Now, I've got the floppy cover off, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to see the head move. You power the thing up and we can make it do it, but that's not the head. The head's buried away elsewhere in there, so you don't see anything move, unfortunately. And here we go. I think I've got all the screws out. And will this lift up? Ta-da! We're in like Flynn. Beauty. And right away we can see the density inside this thing. Look, they really haven't wasted too much space. I mean, the floppy drive takes up an absolute ton of space inside there. But yeah, they've done a really good fit to envelope design in there. Like they've done it as a curved design like that. You can actually see how that multi-board layer approach allows them to get the curve in there like that. Extensive use of flat flex, as you'd expect. You know, this was released in '91, would have been designed in the late '80s. Interestingly, you can see a cutout for a chip there. That'd be, well, that's what I believe it is. Anyway, yeah, I think I can see some pins coming off there. So, yeah, they've done that, cut that out so that they could get a lower profile on that chip so it doesn't take up as much height. So they must have been, you know, pretty desperate for some height at that particular point. So the mechanical designer came back to the PCB layout person and said, hey, we need some extra height in here, but, you know, you're going to have to chop out this part of your board and route everything around it. And groan, yeah, okay, I can do that. Yeah, no worries. You know, I can work magic. And then we've got all our tactile dome buttons there. We've got a real tactile switch there for the main shutter button. Thank you very much. None of this tactile dome on flex rubbish. Notice the careful grounding soldered directly down to there. I'm not sure. Oh, that's the, I think that's, is that the cage of the, oh no, that's the negative of the battery, is it? Or the metal frame surrounding that. So really well shielded. They're going to town also screwing down, probably got a ground connection on the flat flex ribbon there for the tactile domes as well. And it goes down to this board and whatever, you know, shield is under there for the battery or whatnot. So that's pretty decent. Now to get this board out here, we might have to unsolder something here. Where's that going off to? Not entirely sure, but yeah, this might not be easy to get back together. And our viewfinder just popped out, and there is that red shutter that I was telling you about. This goes off to the macro switch on the side, and it just moves in a little bit of red film there into the, you know, partly into the shot, just to show you that you're in macro mode, because there's no, you know, image data or any crap like that on there. It's just an optical viewfinder. And underneath the viewfinder that went in here, wow, check out all the little trimmer pots in there. Someone's got to get in there and go with the tongue at the right angle. Someone with a grey beard, that's, hey, PAL video for you. This is an analog camera. Remember that. It is not digitally processing this image. This thing is basically just a camcorder that doesn't record video. It just records still images on the disc, in this case, instead of tape. And by the way, if you wanted to know where the Sony prefix DSC or digital still camera came from, there it is. Still camera, but it's digital instead of analog. And let's see if we can get the sensor out here. And this is about a 230,000 element CCD sensor, I believe. And that makes, oh, we've got a spring in there. That makes sense because PAL is 720 by 576, but this has got 720 by about 320, I believe it. Well, they only specified in lines, so about 320 lines. So it's not the full PAL standard. So yeah, we may have to get that board out. Anyway, this thing is really rather difficult to get apart. It wasn't designed for servicing, that's for sure. Probably connects a larger way connector over here. I think I might be right. Yep. Oh, it's a bit brutal, but look at that. We got it. There we go. And there is our entire camera sensor module. Look at that. They would have assembled and tested that completely separately. And whoa, look at that little power package. That's interesting. Wow. Haven't seen something like that in a long time. And to enable the testing of that, you can see the test pads on there. They would have shoved this thing down into some sort of test jig, although, you know, I don't know necessarily why, because you've got the connector on there already, but maybe they were just, yeah, they're all just going off to there. So anyway, that might have been just an easier way than actually having to plug in a physical connector. It might be just be quicker to put that on a bed of nails than it is to plug in that connector there. And they've done the exact same thing over here as well. And we seem to at least have two motors in here. You can see the little enamel coated wire going off there. That's going off to some motor down in there, and it looks like there's another one on the bottom there. So let's hook up our function gen to that and see if we can get that to operate. You can usually get these little motors to flip at a volt or two. So you usually like start out with a volt on your power supply and hook it up to the motor, and you can get it to do stuff. Now, I was able to get it with my power supply, but I've hooked this up to my function gen. I've got it set to 8 volts peak to peak before I actually got it to do this, and I've got a 1 hertz square wave. There we go. Look at that. Sweet. See the iris moving open, and if I increase the amplitude, it should open all the way. And that's with an 8 volt sine wave. There we go. It's a, what's that, a 4-bladed iris, is it? Okay, let's take that up to 10 volts peak to peak. Square wave. Yeah, it's opening more now. And the other one off to the side here seems to be the shutter. Let me first of all open the iris. There we go. And now let's do the other one, the shutter. Here we go. Boom. And if we take this bracket off here, that holds the back board in place for the sensor. It should just be its own self-contained board, and that will have the surface mount sensor on it. You can bet your bottom dollar. Ta-da! There it is. Aha, beautiful. Let me get the macro lens out. Now that's really interesting. It looks like it's got some clear encapsulant there, and that is fascinating. Different to like camcorder teardowns we've seen previously that typically have a bare die. This one seems to have, is that like a glass lens on top of it, a glass protective lens. So there you go, that's the 230 odd thousand or thereabouts picture elements. Thank you very much. Oh, and that cutout that we saw on the main board, they've also got the same here. This is actually a power package, and it's likely a power package on the other one too. There it is. So I was a little bit off about doing it for height reasons. Most likely not. It's because it's got big power tabs which get the heat out from the internally from the die there. Now this camera is actually a fixed focus system, so there's no traditional focus motor with extra lens in there, so there's not going to be a focus sensor. So this puppy here, rather than being a traditional focus type sensor, is going to be some sort of sensor for the metering, so some sort of exposure sensor. Let's take it out and have a squiz. There we go. Some little encapsulated photo sensor thingy. Bonus points if you can find a data sheet for that puppy. So that's about all she wrote for that module. It's pretty simple, you know, no fancy focusing lens arrangement, just a simple fixed focus camera straight on a sensor, iris, shutter, and some metering. No worries. Oops, you got to be careful taking out these connectors. That one's stuck in there pretty good, and yeah, did I damage some tracks? Yeah, this thing's not designed to be easily serviced. We've got some fixed wires soldered over here, which you got to unsolder. These wires going over to this board are soldered over to here. There we go. But they do have a connector down here, which hopefully we can pull out and get that board out. The good thing about this board, look, I've got some board-to-board interconnects there and there, so it's densely packed and interconnected. It really is quite an effort. Oh, I got another bloody connector on the back here. Hang on. There we go. And that one should just flip out. Ta-da! And if we have a look at the main processor board here, some sort of Motorola processory thing, I don't know, that number doesn't bring up anything on first search, and, well, I don't know, another Mitsubishi jobby down there. It's going to be, you know, a fair bit of custom stuff on here, bet your bottom dollar. And once again, there's that power package we saw, so it wasn't a height thing to have the cutout on the back side of the board. It was merely that the power package just had to sit down flush into the board. Now we're getting more and more into this. We just flipped this out of the case, undid a couple of screws on the side. We've got our power supply stuff over there. We'll take a look at it. All this sort of stuff here is all floppy drive controller stuff, because the floppy mechanism sits directly all on top of that. So that's all the mechanical transport and the head and everything else, and this would be the motor drive and the all the requisite, you know, the head amplifier and all that sort of jazz as well. So this actually gives you a sense of how much of the camera itself is made up of just the storage mechanism. I mean, this is it. All this stuff here with all of its, all of the trimmer adjustments, everything else. This entire mechanism would take up more than half, probably, you know, 2/3 of the size of this thing, and that's just to store your photos on this 2-inch floppy. And of course this, you know, in a modern, any sort of digital camera after like the late 90s, you know, like 6-7 years after this, would have been stored to a SD card. So that's just, you know, all that effort, most of the design effort would have revolved around storing stuff on these video floppies. I mean, it's just incredible. You know, in terms of like the processing and stuff like that, doesn't have to do bugger all. It's basically all the analog processing, storing it on the floppy, the physical disk transport mechanism and all that sort of stuff, the ejection, and you know, that's it. So you can see why these things just died in the ass, as did, say, the Sony Mavica one camera, which I've done a teardown of, which saved images to 3.5-inch floppy drive. The storage medium just changed everything once those SDs or compact flash cards came along. It just, yeah, these things were just obsolete overnight. But you can imagine the design meeting for this in the late 80s, you know, like 1989. This came out in 91, so maybe 1990, for example. We're in the 1990s, for goodness sake, and the best idea they could come up with for a consumer camera was not a digital camera, was to store it in old analog PAL format on a 2-inch floppy drive. I mean, it's just, yeah, that's the best they could come up with. But hey, just nothing else really existed. We didn't have like flash memory and stuff like that back then. Really hadn't taken off. And that's the thing, this was just like at the end of its life, because even though flash memory was developed in 1980 by Toshiba, it wasn't until 1988 that Intel came out with their first NOR flash memory chip. So they would have known about this, the NOR flash memory, when they started to do this, but either it wasn't, the write cycles weren't there, it could have been 100 or 1,000 or something, or it was just too expensive or whatever, or they didn't have the digital processing technology to convert the image and store it digitally. So the first digital cameras. So, you know, even though technically the flash type memory was there to store these things, you know, they still went ahead and used the video floppy and stored it analog wise. And the first NAND flash memory didn't come out until 1995, so a good 5 years after this thing was developed. And of course the SD card that you're familiar with these days didn't come out until 1999, and compact flash was still 4 years out at 1994 or thereabouts. So this thing just so happened to be designed at the tail end of the analog period, and after that, a couple of years later, everyone was thinking, nah, we're going to do this digitally. And we're in like Flynn on the floppy controller here, and you can see the amount of effort that goes into this thing. I mean, tons of shielding as well, and you can see how they've earthed the metal cans there, and then they've got that going over to the main chassis of the floppy drive transport mechanism. Another one of those power packages there. I rather like the look of those. They're pretty jazzy. Anyway, that's all on Flatflex, so that's you know, pretty advanced little tiny transport mechanism for your 2-inch floppy. That's pretty impressive technology for the day. I'm not sure if I'll take that down further or not, but maybe we can see if we can flip a couple of cans off. But you can tell what's going to be under there, because look, we got ourselves a shielded coax there going over, or a shielded twisted pair going over, so that's going to be coming from the head, and that's going to be the head amplifier. And you can see the tiny little wires going over there to the head down on the, and of course the head will move across the disc back and forth like that as the disc spins. And I'd love to put a disc here and show you it working, but unfortunately you've got to actually connect the thing all back up and then it's hidden. So yeah, that's not going to work. But we can certainly pop this puppy open. Here's the little catch here. Twang! If we stick the disc in there we go. Maybe you can see it, I don't know. It's not going to be terrific. And then close it up, and now the head will be sitting on the exposed floppy surface down in there. There you go, you can see the reflection. And as I put the floppy in, you should be able to see that retract due to some hooks on the side there. Ta-da! It opens up and exposes the disc to the head. And the interesting thing about this, you can tell it's an all analog system, because here's the head coming over, head amplifier, and all this analog video power processing here. Here's our video output connector, which goes on the side of the board there. It is just directly connected to all this. All this processor rubbish, it's got nothing to do with it. That just drives the LCD and, interfaces to the buttons and does a few things like that, really. But, yep, it's basically an entire analog camera. And if you flip this big metal shield off, we can start to see all the analog video processing here. There's a Toshiba TA8741F. Probably good luck getting data on that. I don't know. But look at all the trimmers. Look at them all, as if there wasn't enough on the other side already. Count them. I don't know, I've lost count already. Oh, wow, look at them. Wow. Somebody had to tweak all these bastards. Unbelievable. Look at them all. Look. This is ridiculous. That's insanity. I've got to count them now. I counted 40. 40 trim pots on this bastard. And are there any on the other side? No, I think they're all on that side. 40 trimmers. Somebody had to trim all those things. Unbelievable. Now, I've taken most of the cans off here, and if you remember back right at the start, we had those exposed 4 pins outside the case, accessible if you just took the outside case off. Now, that's coming from this puppy here. Haven't looked up that yet, but look where it is on the other side. Ta-da! That is our head amplifier, taking the metal can off. So that is obviously our head amplifier. So those pins that we saw on the outside that were accessible, they were obviously for to allow maybe even servicing realignment of the head, checking the alignment of the head when the thing is fully assembled. So that's rather clever. What else have we got? We've got a Hitachi HA11882. We'll have a squiz for the data sheet for that one, see if we can find anything. And there is yes, we finally found a Canon branded chip. Check that out. So that's obviously some sort of custom puppy. We've got ourselves a clock up there. So that'd be some sort of, CK4, some sort of clock gen. That was under a metal shield as well. Little trimmer adjustment there to just tweak the frequency of that crystal. And, well, not much else interesting. And it looks like we've got some sort of filter there. That could be some sort of, band passy type job. And on the bottom side here, a TI part. That was under a metal can as well. It's got its own crystal. And a couple of more filtery stuff. Look at this. Adjustable slug-tuned inductors. And, yeah, all that for the PAL video standard. Tons of stuff required. All that when you could have just stored it digitally. But not at the time. Only later. And I think this video's gone on long enough, so I won't crack open the power supply and things like that. Going to have a switching converter inside that can, nothing fancy. There's the photo flash capacitor, and that's on its own separate board going over to the flash over here. Dangerous, no touchy, unless you've discharged the thing. So that's nothing doing there, really. So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that teardown of the Canon Ion still video analog camera, the RC260. It'd be quite similar in the RC250, which came out in 1988. So you can say this is basically late 80s technology, although this did come out in 91. It was on the tail end of the switch from analog recording, which was not popular at all. I mean, these video floppies, they never really took off. I mean, this is serial number 5000. How many did they make? They probably wouldn't have sold a huge number of these things, although, you know, I could be wrong, because it was the only thing available at the time. But as you've seen, the quality is awful. To store just PAL frames, I mean, it's just... it's horrible. I mean, you get just the same thing, or even better, actually, if you filmed it with a camcorder and then just press pause on the camcorder and just recorded video and press pause. But hey, you know, yeah, it's not that terrific. And of course, it was completely killed, obsolete practically overnight once digital storage technology and digital processing, and once the late 90s came. Hey, it was all over Red Rover, the complete switch to digital cameras with compact flash cards and digital processing, and then JPEG and everything else. So, yeah, but fascinating look at an obsolete technology. So if you actually had one of these things and you actually found it useful at the time, then, and how you actually used it, or if you got some old photos from one of these things, please, photos, effectively still video, see if you can capture it, and please let us know and upload them. It'll be absolutely fascinating. But yeah, this thing still worked after all these years. Not surprising, you know, I would have given it a fairly good chance to work, but yeah, it's just, as far as actually taking photos, it's crusty as. But we needed this step in the technology to eventually get to digital, you could argue, you know, and it is some brilliant engineering in here. Lots of fit-to-envelope design and tons of engineering that went into this. So anyway, if you like that, please give it a big thumbs up. As always, there's some high-res teardown photos over on EEVblog.com if you want to take a closer look, and I hope you enjoyed it. Catch you next time. Hi, welcome to Teardown Tuesday. You know, I love vintage stuff here on the EEVblog, so I've got another vintage teardown. Bit of consumer history here. This is Sony's first really usable consumer camera. Not quite, actually. The first one was the DSC F1 model back in 1996, but that didn't have any removable media in it. This was Sony's first camera that actually had removable media. You could take it out with your images on it,